I welcome all. We're going to be starting in just another minute or so, waiting for other pupils to jump on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. If you are excited to be here, can you please react with thumbs up or a smiling emoji in the comments? We're all super excited to be here today. Thank you for joining us for Decoding the Data, a special briefing for members of the media on Cook
Heat.
County's new
Experts
criminal justice dashboard. My name is Reverend Sierra Bakes Chamberlain, and I'll be your MC for the event. I am founder and executive director of Live Free Illinois. Live Free Illinois is focused on addressing drivers and impacts of issues at the intersection of public safety and criminal justice reform. We work with over 120 congregations across the state and with individuals who are directly impacted by gun violence and incarceration. We serve as a bridge between policymakers and communities by engaging all stakeholders, leaders, organizations, and individuals to impact policies and promote community centered reform. I am glad to be here today to help facilitate this important exchange. When it comes to the criminal legal system, the importance of transparency and access to information cannot be overstated. The American criminal legal system have contributed to mass incarceration, and cycles of incarceration have had devastating impacts on communities of color. Historically, transparency have been more of the exception, not the rule. And it is so important for our communities to know the data. Data is not just numbers, it's evidence of injustice, proof of resilience, and a tool for liberation. Communities must own it, understand it, and use it to fight back. Without data, decisions are made without us. Understanding our data is how we organize smarter, advocate stronger, and disrupt systems that count us out. Systems have used data to criminalize us. We use the community uses it to humanize us, to strategize, and to organize toward freedom. For this reason, we are proud to see Cook County stepping forward as leaders in facilitating public access to information. We can use a clapping emoji or a heart emoji to respond to that right there. This dashboard will be a vital resource for government stakeholders and community advocates. It will help promote better understanding of complex issues and outcomes. It will help spark important questions that we hope will result in meaningful solutions and continued progress. During today's event, you will hear directly from the leaders and researchers who have made the dashboard possible. We will start with remarks from government leaders, then move into real time demonstration of the dashboard, followed by an opportunity for on topic questions. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle will open the event. She will be followed by remarks from justice system leaders, Chief Judge Timothy Evans, Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke, Clerk of the Circuit Court Marion Seropolis. I am so sorry for messing that up. And Cook County Public Defender Sharon Mitchell. Thank you, and please welcome Madam President Tony Preckwinkle.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody.
I want to thank all the elected officials and appointed leaders who are joining me today to announce Cook County's new criminal justice dashboard. Before I begin, I want to thank a few key partners, Dave Olson and Don Steeman from Loyola University Center for Criminal Research. Both of them have been instrumental in helping the county reach this milestone. So thank you, Don and David. I'd also like to acknowledge Chief Judge Timothy Evans, Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke, Clerk of the Court Mariana Spiropoulos, hard name to pronounce, you're right, Cook County Public Defender Sharon Mitchell, and Reverend Sierra Bates Chamberlain, founder and executive director of Live Free Illinois, who is our moderator. Thank you so much. And thanks to the Justice Advisory Council for their efforts in helping move this important project forward. Now let's talk about why the dashboard matters. The dashboard you are about to see is a significant achievement for Cook County, something we've been working on for years, actually. It's the result of thoughtful collaboration between the county's criminal justice agencies, and I want to thank each of those offices as well for their partnership. It also reflects our shared commitment to transparency. This dashboard is designed to make information connected to the criminal justice system more accessible, easier to navigate, and easier to understand. To give you a little background, this project started with Cook County's involvement in the MacArthur Foundation's Safety and Justice Challenge. That initiative was all about rethinking how local criminal justice systems work, with the goal of increasing equity and reducing unnecessary jail detention. Cook County joined the challenge a decade ago, not long after it launched. At that time, the Cook County Jail was severely overcrowded, with more than 10,000 people behind its walls. That's the daily average. More than 70% of those individuals were African Americans. That fact alone makes clear why reform was and still is so urgent. Let me just say, Cook County has a population of about 26% Latinos, 24% African Americans, about 8% Asians. So the fact that 70% of the people in the jail is astonishing and profoundly disturbing. 70% of them are African Americans, that is. The Safety and Justice Challenge helped us to begin a new chapter. We started by creating a structure for collaboration among all the criminal justice stakeholders, many of whom have been working in silos. Together, we developed a range of strategies to reduce the jail population and tackle the racial disparities in our system. From automated court date reminders to diversion programs to new ways of engaging communities, we've made meaningful progress. That progress laid the foundation for Cook County's bond reform and the implementation of the Pretrial Fairness Act. So I think it's fair to say that the good work we did in Cook County laid the foundation in the state for PFA. And I am proud to say that, and I'm not sure we're the only state now, but when we enacted the Pretrial Fairness Act, Illinois was the only state in the country that did not have cash bond. And while all this was happening, we were also laying the foundation for this public dashboard. Today, we're proud to share the result of that work. We hope this dashboard will become a valuable tool for many, including the media, policy advocates, community leaders, and organizations. It will also help our own agencies better understand the bigger picture, the trends and patterns shaping our system. For years, our criminal justice offices have shared data on their own. This dashboard brings those pieces together in one place. It also lets us filter the data by demographics and other factors. That ability to track trends across the system will help us keep pushing toward a criminal justice system that's more fair, more effective, and focused on the safety and well-being of individuals and communities. Of course, this is just the beginning. We remain committed to transparency and access to information. We'll continue to update and refine the dashboard over time. Our goal is that it will encourage thoughtful questions and insights from government and community stakeholders alike. Before I close, I want to thank the leaders who stand with me today, the stakeholders in our criminal justice system. The broad support you see here reflects years of cross-agency collaboration and a shared commitment to transparency and reform. I also want to thank the members of the media who've joined us today. You play a vital role in shaping public awareness of the most critical issues facing our county and our nation. We recognize the challenges you face in your profession, and we appreciate your commitment to keeping the public informed. Thank you for your engagement and participation. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Chief Judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County, Timothy Evans.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for that very kind and generous introduction and your opening remarks. I certainly also want to thank all of the stakeholders who have joined us here today, the representatives from Loyola University, representatives from the MacArthur Foundation, and all those who made this day possible. You'll have to pardon me, I'm talking through a cold that's competing with my voice today, but I am happy to embrace the concept of transparency and interagency collaboration. We've been down that road for the last 8 years, focusing even initially on pretrial reform that led to 18.8A and the commitment away from money bail that President Pettenwinkle talked about. We did that as a boon to collaboration as well, and as she indicated, the whole state followed our lead here in Cook County, and I believe ultimately the rest of the country will do likewise. I don't believe there's any other state so far that has eliminated cash bail completely as we have in the state of Illinois, flowing from what has happened here in Cook County. I also want to emphasize the work that was done with interagency collaboration under the original Safety and Justice Challenge, the same foundation that is funding the work being done now by Loyola. And I tip my hat to David Olson and to Don Steeman. We've been working with them since our early commitments to pretrial reform, and I tip my hat to them on an ongoing collaboration. I know that this is just the start of this dashboard process, and we would expect that data will be updated, and my office will continue to cooperate in every possible way. Our next speaker is the state's attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, and I now call on her.
Thank you, Chief. This kind of collaboration and the shared sense of purpose that underlies this project is a positive step. While we may at times be adversaries in the courtroom, we are allies in the work of strengthening our justice system. Together, we're making meaningful strides to ensure that the people of Cook County not only experience justice, but can trust the system that delivers it. As this dashboard was developed, my team at the State's Attorney's Office appreciated how responsive the development team was. The development team was committed to getting it right. That matters, especially when we're talking about translating complex legal processes into something that's clear and understandable to the public. As an example, our office was able to provide significant input in how the glossary was assembled, how terms are defined, and how core concepts are explained. I know that might not sound like a big deal, but it's really important because data points without context or a clear understanding of what is being measured only tell you so much. This is particularly true for the time between when a charging decision is made and a trial begins, which is where my office does an incredible amount of work, most of it outside the public eye. This dashboard is a tool to help the public better understand what happens during that period. We're hopeful that this dashboard will provide clarity, and clarity builds trust. It will help residents see in a concrete way how the system works and at times where it doesn't. That kind of visibility is essential if we want to drive trust and accountability. Because after all, what can be measured can be managed. That's more than a mantra. It's part of the philosophy that we are utilizing in the State's Attorney's Office. We've retooled our information technology and data analytics operation to ensure not only that we're collecting the most useful data, but we have a plan to use it, to evaluate outcomes, to track whether our policies are working, to make us better at our jobs. If something isn't working, I want to know so we can change it. If something is working well, I want to know that too, so we can double down. That's how you run an accountable public institution and a strategic one. Now there's still more work ahead. One of my top priorities is to secure a fully integrated case management system for our office. That's something that we currently lack, and it's a gap that hinders our ability to operate with the kind of efficiency the public deserves. But we are committed to fixing that. Today's dashboard launch is a step forward. It's a foundation we will continue to build upon. I look forward to seeing this come into fruition. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Cook County Circuit Court Clerk, and I'm going to get her name right, Mariana Spiriopoulos. Thank you all.
Mariana, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Madam President. Spiropolis rhymes with metropolis.
Yes, Spiropolis.
Here we go. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm Mariana Spiropolis, Clerk of the Circuit Court. I am grateful to be here to celebrate the county dashboard. It's an honor to be here with President Preckwinkle, Chief Judge Evans, State's Attorney O'Neill Burke, and Public Defender Sharon Mitchell, all of us having the same goal, the same message to residents. We want to be transparent, show accountability, and have court data be accessible to the people of Cook County. Transparency dashboards reflect the integrity of Cook County as a whole. Trust in government is paramount to democracy. When citizens trust their government, they're more likely to engage in civic activities, participate in elections, and accept outcomes of political processes. Trust in government is rooted in the belief that political institutions and leaders act in the best interest of the public, encompassing confidence in the electoral process, the rule of law, and the responsiveness of governance structures to citizens' needs. To build trust, it's essential to improve transparency, accountability, responsiveness, and the perceived effectiveness of government policies. The Clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County is the front door to the justice system. We are the record keeper. When talking about the county dashboard, we play a foundational role in supplying verified, accurate, and timely data. We ensure that every data point shared aligns with the integrity of the court record and accurately reflects actual court activity. In partnership with the Office of the Chief Judge, we provide comprehensive data that enables the dashboard to offer meaningful insights into the justice system. We provide detailed information on every case initiated. This includes case numbers, filing dates, the type of case, for example, a felony or misdemeanor, file location or jurisdiction, charges filed, location of incident, if the defendant is in custody, where they're being held, and the release information. This data helps track the volume and trends in new court activity across time and in different jurisdictions. Our records include key demographic information tied to defendants at the time of case initiation. This includes their gender, zip code, residence when available, and their race. This allows for the identification of potential disparities and trends in how cases are processed and resolved. We also provide data on what happens during the initial appearance in court, including detention hearing outcomes and the release conditions or hold orders. This creates transparency into judicial decisions made at the earliest and often most critical stage of the criminal justice process. Our records track case outcomes once a case has reached its conclusion and will show dismissals, pleas, or trial outcomes. Sentencing details will also be tracked to show if defendants have been given probation, incarceration, or community service. This allows for long-term trend analysis on case flow, efficiency, and outcomes across the justice system. By sharing this data, we help ensure the dashboard serves as a reliable, transparent, and accountable resource for justice stakeholders and the public. Our office remains committed to modernizing access to information and reinforcing public trust in the integrity of the court system. My office has also launched its office first ever public-facing data dashboard. Our dashboard provides direct access to case filing data dating back to 2020. It allows users to filter data by court division, location, or type of law, giving the public meaningful insight into court operations for the first time. As we continue in this political climate, it is important to have the trust of political leaders. Giving the residents of Cook County a look into the work we're doing is important to foster those relationships of trust and honesty. My office will continue to strengthen relationships and work with other county agencies to ensure that we continue to support each other and the public that we serve. Thank you again to the Cook County leaders standing with us today. And I want to thank the MacArthur Foundation Safety and Justice Challenge and Loyola University Chicago Center for Criminal Justice Research for all of their hard work. Thank you. And am I supposed to hand it over to Mr. Mitchell?
Thank
Okay,
you, Clerk. Appreciate you.
thank you.
Thank you so much to the organizers of this panel, the researchers who have put together this wonderful dashboard, along with support of our justice stakeholders, our chief judge, our state's attorney, and our clerk. I will not take offense at being called last, only because I'm sharing the E stage with such a powerful panel, but that is the only reason why I won't take offense. I'm just joking, I'm just joking. But with all seriousness, today is like a really important day. Transparency and data are so incredibly important in how we approach this work and how we understand the system, how we advocate for change, how we distribute resources. We're in an incredibly interesting time when it comes to criminal justice policy and public safety. For the last several years, we've seen evidence that crime and harm, both that is categorized as property crime or violent crime, is near or at historic lows. I was on Blue Sky the other day. I know I'm a super cool guy in my free time, and came across a post from a guy by the name of Jeff Asher. He's a relatively prominent criminologist. He was talking about the possibility that the U.S. could report the lowest murder rate ever recorded or lowest property rate ever recorded since about 1968. We've seen similar drops here, both in the county and the city and some of the large suburbs. Massive investment in the by the public sector, foundation community, the nonprofit community, shout out to Live Free Chicago, after the COVID crisis, certainly have been powerful in seeing those returns. But at the same time, there are some things that are undeniable. Even if crime and most importantly harm is down, any instance of crime or harm, whether it comes from the hand of a fellow community member or the system, is still incredibly impactful to the people that feel it. We also know that while there are maybe numbers that suggest crime is down, the safety gap is real, and the perception of crime and the fear around crime has really reached a fever pitch. That affects how we make decisions about how we move forward and how we spend our resources and how we operate in the system. The intersection of falling crime rates and high fear puts us in a really interesting position. I think there's no better way to respond to that, though, with transparency and context and data. We're at an intersection where we can go in two different ways, and really having the information on how the system works is going to be so important. The sad reality is that the public's understanding of the criminal system is typically built on the backs of coverage of unusual cases. There are no blog posts or push notifications or social media posts about the story of a man who went to court 8 times and had his case resolved with no incident, right? That's the most common scenario oftentimes, right? But we would never know it the way we cover it. And I'm so happy that the president's office and the state attorney's office and the clerk's office, the chief judge's office have leaned in along with the public defender's office to give folks more context. It's an opportunity to really understand the system as we contemplate some of these really important future decisions. And we hope that the dashboard, at least at our office, will be a tool that reporters can use to provide additional context to their stories so that the public can better understand how the system functions. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all the speakers today and answering questions. And I apologize, I'm going to be a bad panelist because I'm supposed to pass it to who?
Pass it back to me.
I'm going to pass it back to the director of Live Free Illinois.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Public Defender Mitchell. And thank you to the other leaders for sharing your perspectives. I think we should all give them a round of applause for their leadership on this. This work is super important. It is impactful, even in this virtual setting, to see you together and hear about your shared commitment to this work. So up next, I am pleased to welcome David Olson and Di Steeman, who are researchers, professors, and co-directors of the Loyola University of Chicago Center for Criminal Justice Research. Both Dave and Don have decades of experience leading local and national research, including a review of Cook County's 2018 bond reform order. Dave and Don have worked closely with Cook County stakeholders in the development of this dashboard, and we are grateful for their participation today. The demonstration will begin with a high-level overview of the dashboard and the data it contains. Then Dave and Don will focus on a few specific examples of how the dashboard can be used to explore different questions and subject areas. Following the presentation, we will transition to the questions and answer sessions with researchers and representatives from Cook County agencies here today.
Right. Thanks, Reverend
David
Bates
and
Chamberlain.
Don.
Hi. I'm going to provide some introductory remarks about the dashboard and its development, and then Don's going to walk us through a demo of it. You've heard a lot about the dashboard. The dashboard site will be put in the chat at the end of the webinar, and it'll be available to everybody at that point. So we're excited to publicly release the Cook County Criminal Justice Dashboard. We want to make it clear that this is not Loyola's dashboard, and it's not any specific agency's dashboard. The creation of the dashboard has been a collaboration across all the Cook County stakeholders that are here today. Importantly, this has been a collaboration. We've all come together over the past few years to produce a resource we believe is needed and valuable, but every partner maintained their independence. As an anchor institution, Loyola is committed to community through teaching, research, and service by its students, faculty, and staff. Loyola Center for Criminal Justice was established 10 years ago to provide criminal justice practitioners and policymakers with objective and independent research to support the development and implementation of more effective responses to crime. What we're going to provide you today with is an overview of the data dashboard, including what the data dashboard can be used for, and just as importantly, what the data dashboard is not designed to do. We'll also demonstrate how to navigate and use the dashboard and provide a few examples of specific topics to illustrate this. Importantly, the dashboard balances transparency with privacy. It allows justice system practitioners, policymakers, and the public to see trends and patterns at both the macro and micro level without disclosing identifiable information about those who are accused of crime or victims of crime. The primary purpose is to identify trends and patterns, and to a degree, understand why we may be seeing the trends and patterns that we do. The dashboard is not a case management system. It isn't designed and can't be used to look up individual cases or individuals. It's also not all-encompassing. It doesn't contain data on every conceivable question users may have. It's also not designed to provide all the whys as to why we may see the trends and patterns that we do, but it is designed to generate questions. Lastly, it's not complete or finished. Right? This will be evolving. It'll be expanded upon, enhanced, modified, as not only more data gets processed, but as user questions emerge that we want to be able to answer. It's intended to provide users with a single website to obtain key metrics from agencies operating at different levels and branches of government with standardized categories and formats of data. It's also intended to be timely. As mentioned, we'll be updating the data here quarterly from this point going forward. It's also designed to be accessible. You don't need to know how to use statistical software or work with raw data to get at basic or even detailed information. While many government agencies make data available in a raw format that's often not useful to the public or policymakers, through the dashboard, Cook County is making information available. And otherwise, we're converting raw data into useful data visualizations. I'll now turn it over to Don, who will demonstrate how to navigate and use the dashboard.
Thank you, Dave. Before I share it, I just want to reiterate a couple points that Dave made. One, it's important to understand that the criminal justice system is extremely complex. The data produced by the various agencies can also be incredibly complex. For the last few years, we've worked closely with staff, data and policy staff at all of the criminal justice agencies in Cook County to better understand their processes, how they collect data, how they store data, and how the data that we're seeing represents what's happening in their different agencies. It's also important to note that this is not designed to be an audit of the data collected by any of those agencies. There are instances where the numbers produced included in the dashboard might be slightly different than what is produced or reported by these agencies. That's for a variety of reasons. We may classify things slightly differently than agencies do. Data may be updated over time, which would change how it looks historically. Information gets corrected over time. So people should use the dashboard to look more at examining trends and patterns in the data rather than as an effort to critique or audit data that's put out in other reports. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so we can walk through the dashboard a little bit. Everybody can see this, I hope. Good.
Yep.
This is the landing page for the Cook County dashboard. And before I start, I just want to acknowledge the hard work that went into this. Dave and I are not the only two, obviously, who produced this. Our colleague, Brandon DuPont, is the architect of this website. He is the one who designed the way it looks and created it. Letty Monreal is one of our staff who's responsible for working with the prison and parole data. We have a set of graduate students and undergraduate students who are responsible for building code that gets crime and arrest data from the Chicago Police Department. So this is really a team effort by everybody at Loyola, but it's also a very strong partnership, as I said before, with research and policy staff at all of the agencies in Cook County. As others have said, this dashboard was made possible with funding to Loyola from the MacArthur Foundation. They're responsible for providing funds to us to make sure that we could create this and maintain it over time. So I just want to orient people a little bit to what this dashboard looks like. This is the landing page, the first page that people see when they come to the dashboard. Across the top are different sections of the dashboard. It's currently divided into 6 sections that look at different parts of the criminal justice system, from crime and arrest through felony review by the state's attorney's office, what happens in court from the time cases are filed until they're disposed and sentenced, jail, people admitted to the jail and released from the jail and the jail population, and then those individuals in prison and on parole from Cook County. You can navigate from across the top, which will take you to any one of the sections of the dashboard about that specific type of data. You can also explore the section here, which gives you a little bit more information about what you'll find when you click through to those different pages. There's also a glossary and methods section. This provides some general definitions of terms that are used in the criminal justice system that folks might not be familiar with. It also provides information about how we worked with the data from the various agencies, how data were sorted and grouped, how we coded some things into different categories, and where the data comes from. We just wanted to demo a few things, simple things that you can think about. We might approach it, for example, if someone has a question about the criminal justice system. For example, if someone has wants to know what are the trends in criminal case filings in Cook County, they could navigate to the court section. And at the top of each one of these sections, there'll be a brief description about what happens in this part of the criminal justice system after a case, for example, is referred to the state's attorney's office and a case is filed. It starts its progress through the courts. And in here, you'll find information about filings, about decisions made at detention hearings or before the Pretrial Fairness Act, what was happening at bond court hearings, case dispositions, sentences. So here we'll orient you a little bit about what kind of data you'll see and what this part of the criminal justice system does. For example, if you wanted to look at criminal case filings, you can click on this, explore and filter the data, and it will open the dashboard. All of these pages look very similar across the top. Well, again, we'll reiterate what this part of the dashboard is showing you. And then it will show you general trends. So here is showing you a general trend in the number of cases filed in criminal courts in Cook County. There are a couple ways that you can interact with the data here. Across the top are different ways that you can compare across different either defendant demographics or across case characteristics. By clicking on any one of those, it will change the charts to show you, for example, the distribution of cases by male or female defendants. You can look at it by offense level, for example, if you wanted to know cases filed by felony or misdemeanor status. All of the pages that you'll see will have similar tabs across the top, but will let you make really quick comparisons. Across the bottom of the page will also be a table that will give you raw numbers. You can see those raw numbers by hovering over the chart as well for any given point in time. But at the bottom provides annual numbers about for, in this case, how many cases were filed in criminal courts in Cook County. You can also, for example, if you were more interested in, say, I just want to know how many felony cases were filed in Cook County, there's a filter pane on almost all of the pages. If you just click on it, it opens up a series of filters. You can click on any of these, for example, felonies, close the window, and now it provides information on just felony cases filed in Cook County. If at any point in time you want to make sure that you're looking at everything, you can always clear the filters and it'll take you back to the view you had at the beginning. One important thing to keep in mind, the filters that you put on any given page, for example, here, if you filtered the data by felony and then by another characteristic, for example, only male defendants charged with a felony, those filters will only be on this page. Those won't carry over to another page. For example, if you wanted to then go look at case dispositions also within the court data, those filters wouldn't appear here. You'd have to refilter the data, for example, to look at, it's going to take a minute to load. Sorry, this is because we're doing this through Teams that it's a delay. There shouldn't be a delay. Well, we'll close it out. You should be able to click there and look at felonies as well. You can think about other questions that, for example, a community group might want to know. Let's say a community organization is applying for a grant to assist women who are released from prison on mandatory supervised release or parole and coming back to Cook County. You can come to the mandatory supervised release tab. Again, here it will give you an explanation about what mandatory supervised release means in Illinois. And then will allow you to look at the population of individuals on mandatory supervised release in Cook County. So this is just showing you people on MSR in Cook County. You could, for example, look at this by gender, but you can see that there are very few women on a mandatory supervised release in Cook County, but we could, for example, filter it so we only look at women. And then you can see over time, this population's been going down quite a bit from a high of about 870 women in the first quarter of 2018, down to just 218 women at the end of 2020, or at the first quarter of 2025. You could also use this to look at, for example, current age of people who are being supervised on parole. You can see, for example, if we look just down here, this will give you the raw numbers, but in each one of these charts, you can also break it down by percent. For example, if you wanted to know a breakdown by age within those who are being supervised. And you can see, for example, the number of women who are over 45 years old being supervised on parole has declined quite a bit from about 36% of all women on parole in 2018 down to 25%, 27% at the end of 2024. So the dashboard's really there to help answer different questions that a lot of people might, different variety of people might have. But we can also use it to look at some longer term trends in the system. We can think about it as looking at shocks to the system. There are two that we might think about. One is COVID-19 and the restrictions that it placed on courts and the impact it had on crime and arrests in Chicago. And if we just think about that, each one of these pages also has a line that shows you where COVID was. So if we think about the effect that it had on arrests, and this is only looking at data from the Chicago Police Department, and we want to know the long-term impact of COVID, we can see the immediate effect that COVID had on arrests in Chicago, dropping from about 17,000 arrests in the first quarter of 2020 down to just 8,000 arrests in the second quarter of 2020, and a very slow increase over time, but still well below the number of arrests that there were before COVID. We can see that same trend and its impact across the justice system in the number of cases filed in court. And again, a big drop that we see there. We can see it in dispositions that we saw in court, again, because due to court closures, we see a big drop in cases being disposed of during COVID and then bouncing back, but still at a level well below that it was before COVID restrictions were put in place. And we can also see that impact on the jail with a really big impact in admissions to Cook County Jail due to COVID, and then a number of admissions now well below what it was in the pre-COVID levels. The other that we might want to think about is trying to examine the impact of the Pretrial Fairness Act, which ended cash bail in Illinois. The one interesting thing about that is how it's affected the jail. One interesting thing that we put together was trying to look at the average daily jail population over time and being able to break it down by different either groupings of defendant characteristics or offense types, or even how long people have spent in jail. And the interesting thing to think about is the impact of the PFA was this big drop in the jail population immediately after the Pretrial Fairness Act went into effect. But now we're seeing this very steady climb in the jail population over time until by the first quarter of 2025, the jail population on a daily average was higher than it was immediately before the Pretrial Fairness Act went into effect. What's interesting about the dashboard is you can look at how that's affected the composition of the jail population. So if we look at it by offense type, we can see that most of the people in the jail historically have been there for person offenses. And while there was a drop following the PFA, that group is starting to climb, as well as the number of people who are in the jail for weapons offenses. They're now making up a larger proportion of the jail than they did in the past. The other thing to think about is how long people in the jail have been there. And as we see that increase in the jail population, we can also see that a lot of the increase is coming from people who've been in the jail for 60 days to a year. And that's the group that's really driving the increase in the jail population after the Pretrial Fairness Act. As people are unable to post monetary bail to be released, they're now staying in jail until they can be released by a judge or the disposition of their case. And we're seeing some, what we might call a hardening of the jail, both people who've been there for a longer period of time than they had in the past, and people who are primarily being charged with person offenses and weapons offenses. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dave, who's going to walk through a couple more examples that we can think about how to use the dashboard to explore.
Thanks, Don. So we wanted to show, again, some specific uses or examples of how the dashboard can be used to understand some patterns. Given that we've been working with this intimately for years, there's a few things that we've noticed that we thought we'd point out. Just not only are they interesting, but they illustrate the utility of having a dashboard that can look across the system. As President Preckwinkle mentioned, oftentimes the system is seen as operating in silos, but we're going to provide a couple examples to illustrate how the different components of the system dramatically impact each other, where collectively they're producing outcomes that are important to understand. So the first example we're going to look at are trends and patterns in felony arrests for drug law violations. So using the dashboard, we can go to the crime page, scroll down to the arrest made by the police. And again, using the filters, we can specify that we only want to look at the drug offenses that were felony level offenses. And so when we look at that trend, again, we can see the impact that Don mentioned about the COVID restrictions. Prior to the COVID restrictions, the quarterly number of felony drug law violation arrests in Chicago was somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000. And then following that on a quarterly basis, there were about 1,000. If you scroll down to the bottom, Don, where it shows the actual numbers, you can see in 2018, there were almost 10,000 arrests for felony drug law violations. In 2024, there were 60% fewer at 4,400. So there was a change in policing practices away from arrests for drug law violations. And what we can do is if we look at the next component of the system, if we look at the court and look at case filings, again, we could filter it and say we only want to look at filings for felony drug offenses. And when we do that, we see the same pattern, right? So oftentimes people might look at one segment or one component of the system and see a pattern like this and wonder, why did we see such a big drop in the number of felony cases filed for drug law violations? Well, the prior segment, the arrests, help us to understand that, right? The felony filings dropped because the arrests for those offenses also dropped. If we then go to the court section and look at the sentences imposed, okay, and again, pick the felony drug offenses, right? We can see how those sentencing patterns have also shifted. Right? We see the number of people sentenced to both prison and probation for felony drug offenses dropping dramatically. If we scroll down to the bottom and look at the percent, we can see what percent of people were getting prison versus probation for a felony drug offense. So in 2018, more than 40% of people convicted of a felony drug offense in Cook County were being sentenced to prison. By 2024, it was down to 36%. So the interesting pattern is not only are there fewer felony drug cases entering the courts, but of those that result in a conviction, the portion that are being sentenced to prison has also decreased. Lastly, just to illustrate the connection of the system, if we then look at the sentences or the prison population in Cook County, how many people are in prison, look at it by the offense type. And
Loyola dashboard.
We can see that at the end of 2018, there were roughly 1,700 people in prison from Cook County for a felony drug offense. At the end of 2024, there were only 200 people in prison for a felony drug offense. And if we look at the percentages, we can see that it went from almost 10% of all people in prison in 2018 were there for a drug offense, down to 2% currently. The last example we'll show, we still have a little bit of time, so we're trying to think, would we show this? We'll show it just because it provides a good contrast to what we saw with the felony drug offenses. The next thing we can look at is what's happening with arrests for weapons offenses, right? In the dashboard, and again, in the definitions, it explains things. Weapon offenses are primarily the illegal possession of a firearm or the unlawful discharge of a firearm. These do not include violent crimes committed with a firearm like robberies or homicides. These are illegal possession and unlawful discharge of a firearm. Here you can see an opposite trend from what we saw with the drug arrests, right? These are arrests for weapons offenses. Following COVID, there was actually a higher number of quarterly arrests for weapon offenses in Chicago than there were previously. If we then go to the courts, and again filter on the felony weapon offenses, we can see the increased number of felony cases filed for weapons offenses. Right? If you could kind of do an audible, Don, if you could turn off the filter for the weapons offense and just show the felony. Right. And then go down to the table and show the percent. So this is showing you what percent of all the felony cases filed are categorized into each offense type. So when we look at weapons offenses, in 2018, they accounted for less than 10% of all the felony filings in Cook County. In 2023, or 2022, 2023, they reached a peak. More than a quarter of all the felony cases filed in the courts were for weapons offenses. And it's dropped a little bit, but it's still at a much higher level than it was prior to that increase. And then lastly, again, just to illustrate the interconnectedness of the system, if we look at the sentences imposed, and again, filter it by weapons offenses and felonies, right? Here we can see that there's many more sentences to prison than there are to probation, right? And again, part of this reflects the differences in these two offenses, drug law violations versus weapons offenses. Many of the weapons offenses, like the unlawful possession of a firearm by someone with a prior felony conviction, carries a mandatory prison sentence, whereas many of the drug cases don't carry mandatory prison sentences. So if you scroll down and look at the numbers and percents of people getting these different sentences, we can see that the percent getting prison is consistently above 50%. Right? The last thing to illustrate the impact of weapons offenses on the system and how these cases move is if we look at the prison population or prison admissions. Sorry. And here, if we if you go to the filters, Don. With the prison admissions, we have categories for admissions from court, meaning someone was sentenced to prison by the court, or admissions to prison because someone violated the conditions of their mandatory supervised release and were returned to prison on a violation. So if we filter it just by people sentenced to prison by the courts in Cook County and look at it by the offense type, right? And then again, look at the percent, we can see that in 2018, weapons offenses, which again is illegal possession or unlawful discharge, accounted for about 20% of all the sentences to prison from Cook County in 2018. By 2024, more than 40% of the people being sentenced to prison from Cook County were being sentenced for one of these weapons offenses. So hopefully that provides you with at least a sampling of some of the capabilities of the dashboard and the functionality of it. I think we're right on time in terms of the schedule. So we wanted to make sure we left time for questions of either Donna and myself or representatives from some of the agencies. So I'll turn it back over to you, Sierra.
Thank you so much, Dave and Don, for that exceptional and thorough presentation. Again, can you use your reaction emojis and just give them a round of applause? That was a wonderful presentation. And I'll say this really quickly. This is super important and meaningful to the work that Work Like Live Free Illinois does. Contrary to popular belief, there are other cities in Cook County outside of Chicago. So to have this data available for the entire county is so meaningful to communities throughout Cook County. So again, thank you so much for this presentation. Next, I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, so we're going to transition to Q&A. with the researchers and county representatives. I now welcome Ali Abed, who is the Deputy Director of the Cook County Justice Advisory Council. Ali will help moderate the question and answer session. So I'll